Hello. 416 kilometers to the southeast from Nigeria's seat of government, Abuja, is Enugu, the capital of Enugu State and the coal city of the country. With its good city roads, excellent drainage system and other infrastructures, this coal city is seen by many as the cleanest city in Nigeria. Perhaps other aspects that lend beauty to Enugu are the well-planned layouts distributed within the city. Like any other city in the world, Enugu is carved into low, medium and high density areas and commercial layouts. Devoid of the hustle and bustle of a modern capital city with heavy human and vehicular traffic, Enugu has been endorsed by tourists as the best city for a retreat or a quiet honeymoon. Enugu was a very important political center in the mid-20th century. It was the capital of former eastern region of Nigeria. It still enjoys the capital position today, this time of Enugu State. It is also the political ethnic headquarters of the Igbo peoples of Nigeria. Like all other states of the Nigerian Federation, Enugu State has many local governments through which development is spread to the hinterlands. Although these local governments initiate and execute their own programs and projects, these are without prejudice to state ones. One of such local governments is Udi local government, with headquarters in Udi town, which lies along the highway from Onitsha to Enugu. With a population of about 186,000, Udi local government area is administered by a council comprising an executive chairman and councillors, all democratically elected into the local government. They all represent various communities within the local government area. One of such communities is Eke, a small, modest town with 5 villages. Eke parades quite a number of distinguished citizens, men and women, who have stood out very successfully in their chosen endeavors. Some of them worth mentioning are late Honorable Justice Charles Dadi Onyama, one of the sons of the legendary paramount ruler of Abaja, Chief Onyama. After graduating in law, Dadi Onyama rose from the bar to the bench. His success was a mixture of hard work and sacrifice, and was visibly seen to play fair and square in everything he did. Throughout his service on the bench, from Chief Magistrate to the High Court, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, and the International Court of Justice at The Hague, Justice Dadi Onyama manifested great courage in tackling or addressing issues. Although firm, he was also humane. He became a role model to many of his admirers. Following in his footsteps was his brother, late Honorable Justice Byron Onyama. Byron also had an enviable career at the bar and the bench. Another Eke citizen, a distinguished jurist, is the Honorable Justice Anthony Aniagolo, himself a retired Justice of the Supreme Court. Justice Aniagolo has served this country in many capacities, starting with his elevation to the higher bench in the then Eastern Nigeria Judiciary in 1965, his appointment as the Chief Judge of former Anambra State in 1976, to the distinguished membership of the bench of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, the highest court in the land. Justice Anthony Aniagolo is a writer, having written many law articles. He is also a respected knight of the Roman Catholic Church, an honor bestowed only by the Supreme Pontiff of the Church, His Holiness the Pope, as the head of the Roman Catholic Church worldwide. Others worth mentioning are late Dr. Simon Onwu, the first Igbo medical doctor, a renowned specialist and an acclaimed medical scholar. Although he was favorably disposed to all that came in contact with him, his human relations, his humaneness, endeared him to many people. Sir Patrick Anibo was a seasoned educationist who contributed immensely to the spiritual and intellectual transformation of his people. Many sons and daughters of Eke owe their achievements to this highly respected and revered knight of the Catholic Church. Another educationist and intellectual is Dr. Mrs. Angela Mbo. Her excellent record in the education sector and her unparalleled laudable service in the Enugu State Administration earned her the enviable position of head of service in the state government. Dr. Mrs. Mbo is the first Eke woman, indeed the first woman, to be elevated to that position in the Enugu State Civil Service.
Reverend Father Christopher Enem is the first Catholic priest from Eke, ordained on the 1st of July 1979. Father Enem has been parish priest of many parishes in the Enugu Catholic Diocese. At the time of our last discussion with him, he was the head of St. Teresa's Catholic Church Parish, Ababanike, Enugu. He records his early days.
That the advent of Christianity were like the rest of the towns around, with many cultural, traditional fetish practices going on. But Onyama himself had options to admit different religions. Like the Anglicans arrived first. One is the Jundo, already spreading it around the Anglican mission. But he preferred the white missionaries. That's Onyama. And he had to even send people to invite them to come and prefer them because he wanted to have something foreign, not because the Hindu was black. He wanted something different, and certainly was very instrumental to the advent of Christianity in India. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't himself a Christian, neither did he show interest in becoming one, but surprisingly was very welcoming to the white missionaries, and when they arrived, he made their stay very conducive.
Late Mr. Tom Chibo, also an Eke indigene, was a seasoned journalist, a prolific writer, and a fearless crusader of the rights of the people. Apart from his amiable nature and his great sense of humor, Tom will be remembered for his popular newspaper column, Sledgehammer. He was indeed bold and brave. He wrote and published and was prepared to be damned. Mention should also be made of another educationist whose legacies in the field will always be remembered. He is Mr. Ishi, a man with great knowledge, tremendous strength, will, and alertness. He was one of those who benefited from the education brought to Eke by the early white missionaries. There is still power in his voice in spite of his age. He tells us some history of Eke and the life of the people.
Story has it that there was a migration of people sometimes from the north. People were being pushed down. People from the north pushing down. When they come to a place, they push the people living there. So that kind of pushing down has made Eke people to settle in their present place. So it's a sort of a migration as a result of movement of people from the north towards the south.
What would you say caused this movement? Was it by trade, or was it that there was a war? People were forced out of their natural habitats and they kept moving down.
I believe it wasn't by trade anyway. I hope it was by war.
The last, but by no means the least, is Dr. Adolphus Okolo, a brilliant, humble, and dedicated medical practitioner. Because of his many good qualities, Dr. Okolo was appointed a commissioner in the defunct military government of retired Colonel Robert Akonobi, then military governor of Anambra State of Nigeria. Even though he did not grow up at Eke, Adolphus remembers his greener days and the holidays he spent at home.
Eke was a beautiful, serene village, and a place where I liked to retire to on every holiday. It was a habit for us to come home to the village at Christmas and during long vacations. Vacations in those days were just Christmas periods. Eke was a quiet, cool, beautiful place that gave me a lot of pleasure to come to. I still remember coming home and meeting a lot of other cousins and relatives that came from different parts of Nigeria for the same celebration. You remember the Hamatan period with the trees, because that was what made it really different from the towns where we were coming from. We came into groves of trees and orchard kind of place with palm trees and guava trees and shrubs and big herbs, and then mighty giant trees that seemed to be standing there for lifetimes. So it was beautiful to be there in the cool atmosphere, listening to the whistling of the tall palm trees and other trees, and then the crying of birds and insects that made it really unique.
The history of Eke dates back many centuries. Most of it is oral history, although attempts are being made to document all of it. Situated 20 kilometers west of Enugu, along the Enugu-Nsukka Expressway, Eke is made up of 5 villages that are part of the Ochie family or clan. Other towns that make up the Ochie clan are Nsude, Abia, Udi, and Amokwe. We are told that these 5 members of the Ochie clan are descendants of the couple called Ochie Enugu. Ochie Enugu, who at the time lived at a place called Uguto, famous for its shrine, Ekuto. The shrine has survived the years in spite of numerous attempts by missionaries to do away with it and Christianize the people. It may interest one to know that the current officiating priest of the shrine is a son of late Mr. Okwesili, its early chief priest. Umuoshie, as members of the clan are called, were predominantly farmers and hunters, and so they moved from one location to another, all within the homesteads of the Ochie clan. Eke people then found their present abode conducive and more promising, and therefore settled there, first at a place now called Abogui. The 5 Eke families that later grew into 5 villages sprang up from there. These villages, otherwise known as Ekenese, are Amofia, Amankwo, Oma, Ogui, and Enugu, all named according to seniority. Some of the indigenes speak about the relationship between various members of the Ochie family.
We are part of the Umuoshie clan. Umuoshie clan, closely related with the Nsude people, the Obioma people, the Adla people, the Udu people. But how that ancient covenant or pact, has been still the subject of research by so many people. But we know that it was something very, very solid and very much respected, which nobody should dare to flat. People who tried it haven't lived to tell the story. Like intermarriage. I cannot now, for example, my children cannot go to Sweden to marry. Even though we marry ourselves at Eke, and the Sweden people intermarry. But the Eke man cannot go to marry and to Sweden woman, and vice versa. The same thing with Uji, same thing with Abia, and so on.
We are brothers. I can't marry anybody from Sudan. and a single man cannot marry anybody from Eke. We hate to see the blood, and Eke man, we hate to see the blood of somebody from so, I came to say that kind of relationship still remains. That is that relationship with Eke and the still remains.
Amofia, the oldest of the Eke family, had a large population, but their number was decimated by wars, which they fought in the olden days without the assistance of the other 4 villages. Having suffered defeats and having lost men during these wars, Amofia was then annexed by Amankwo for administrative purposes. Amofia now enjoys full autonomy. Amankwo is nicknamed Acharishan because its people had claimed first position in the Eke family after the annexation of Amofia. Again, during one of the local wars involving Eke people and other clans, the only community or village that challenged the menacing advance of the enemy was Amankwo, and after successfully beating back the enemy, they sent signals to the other members of their clan to return home, and they did. In Igbo belief system or saying, any male child found in his father's house by the visitor is presumed to be the oldest son of the family. And so, Amankwo's claim to seniority or first position in the family was based on this assumption. Oma is the 3rd village that make up Eke community. Currently, the most populous of the Eke clan, its people are predominantly farmers. Ogueke, otherwise known as Agulujoba, is the 4th in the Eke family. Its people are mainly hunters and travelers. They are also blacksmiths. It is here, under a big tree at Abogui, that the first generation of Eke people first settled. Enugu Elias Odunejogo is the last of the 5 villages. The village derived that other name from the fact that there was time in history when its people were always in the forefront in times of communal clashes. They were also called Ntinchi. They never took no for an answer. One great attribute they had was their straightforwardness in their dealings with other people. They always stood by the truth even if their lives were on the line. Eke is known for its repertoire of colorful and historic cultural festivals. Perhaps the most prominent of them are Ibankwa, Igwanshi, Akwari, and the Kani festivals. Ibankwa is one festival celebrated to commemorate those wars that were fought, lost, and won. It is celebrated once every 2 years in the month of September and can take place only when diviners or soothsayers so direct. It is usually preceded by some rituals and sacrifices. Akwari festival is celebrated twice a year. There is the Akwari Okochi, which holds in the month of March during the dry season to usher in the beginning of the farming season, while Akwari Udumiri is held during the wet season to mark the end of the farming season. Akwari Udumiri takes place in the month of September. The Akwari festival proper is most colorfully celebrated during the traditional New Yam Iriji festival. It is important to mention here that the Akwari Udumiri is celebrated by the men folk, as we were told by Ozo Obozo of Enugu, while Akwari Okochi is celebrated by the women folk. During these festivals, the men and women folk are expected to be responsible for their various entertainment or refreshment bills. Masquerade displays are usually part of the Akwari celebrations. The festival lasts for about 1 month. Igwanshi, unlike the previous festivals mentioned, It is held only in the month of May. It is a yearly festival, and it features during the harvest season of the community's staple food, akidi, or black beans. The importance and significance of this staple food dates back to the early days of Eke's involvement in communal wars. It was said that for strength and victory in war, akidi was the answer. Even in beating the Inshi drums, akidi is relished, as Mr. Ozude tells us.
Abianshi used to be a very long, carved wooden drum, covered on the top with leather. And then each participant will hang it across his shoulder, and beat out in real joy of fantasy. Big, 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 big. Big, 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 big. And they used to sing. My people used to say that that is Igbo people mimicking them. Will be saying, they sing, akidi metekwe ahijeri, akidi metekwe ahijeri, akidi metekwe ahijeri, gigidigi po, gigidigi po, gigidigi po.
Yes, those were the days. Nowadays, Okpa, the substitute for akidi, is served during Inshi festivals. We are reliably told that there is a ritual usually performed by adult men who are physically fit, which then ushers in the Inshi festival. It is known as a hurehu. It is dominated by a race by participants which begins from the village square to a big ancient stone called Okotonkume, situated at Uguto, few kilometers away from the square through the thick bush. This race features participants drawn from the Eke community, each striving to outrun his contestants to be the first to get to the stone and return to the village square, the arena for the Inshi festival. Although women do not participate in the Hurehu ceremonies, they are very active at the Inshi festival, beating the drums alongside the men and dancing. We spoke to the chief priest who flags off the Inshi festival after some traditional rituals. His name is Chiara Chibo. He spoke in Igbo. The Inshi festival in Eke is by far the greatest of all the festivals celebrated by the people. It draws home men, women and children from within and outside Nigeria. It is indeed a crowd killer and is adjudged the most colorful and well-attended festival by Eke people, their in-laws and well-wishers. People of all ages participate in the festival. Some indigenous and friends speak on the festival.
During the period of slavery, the Ajansi festival was used for dual purposes. One, to alert the natives about the presence of slave raiders. Second, to warn the slave raiders that the people are aware of their presence. History is free. So they found that there was history in what they were saying. That was a way of saying their places of origin, so that anybody connecting his story with others
Reverend Father Inem, although endorses the festival, wants slight changes effected to make it a positive, spiritual and Christian package.
Actually, the word Ebuanshe. Now there's an attempt to Christianize it, Mwabia. But Ebuanshe itself, certainly the connotation isn't any much thing to write home about, because it connotes that traditional situation in which the use of with their enemies, like vendetta and reprisal, want to show. It was employed, that Ishe was employed in a war that had taken place and was informed. So it's like celebrating the victory of the use of Ishe. I'm not so clear about the meaning, but I know it hasn't any Christian connotation. So that's why there's a move now to drop it and use something more acceptable, like Mbabia. We will now want to prefer something that sounds more Christian.
Ekani Festival is celebrated in November every year during Ekumozo, mainly by Ozo title holders in the community. Ozo Society is a traditional society whose membership consists of only titled gentries. In the olden days, members were admitted when they attained reasonable older adult age, which was put at 60 years and above. Their outfit consisted of a traditional cap with an eagle feather thrust into it, either by the side or behind it, a loincloth tied around the waist or across one of the shoulders, special strings or beads tied round the ankle and the wrist, and a special traditional metal staff of office. Nowadays, however, men of all ages can become Ozo title holders. This is true in most Igbo communities. Again, their outfit vary from place to place. Membership of the society is dictated by the size of the initiate's family purse. We must also mention here that initiation rites vary from one part of Igbo land to another. Eke has many more annual festivals. How are all these festivals seen or accepted by Eke people? What do the festivals mean to them?
It has given freedom. All right. But there are certain things we have lost. On balance, it will be either plus or minus. But really, I think that in the long run it's going to pay us, provided we learn the lesson of not disintegrating it. But when you have things like, the views and postures of people as if there's nothing that should be changed, if people accept that change is part of our life, and then try to moderate things, and go ahead, then we go on with the glory that our ancestors had left for us.
Eke, like many other towns in the eastern part of Nigeria, had an early touch of Western civilization. Apart from European traders who invaded the shores of the country in search of slaves, ivory, minerals and all, their missionary counterparts also came to spread the good news from the Christian Bible. After many years of efforts and sacrifice, with loss of lives in the bargain, they moved offshore into the hinterlands at the risk of hostility by the natives who saw them as evil ones. One of such ports of call, as it were, was Eke here in Enugu State. Today, Eke basks in the gains or dividends of civilization. How did it all happen? Who introduced them into the native lands of Eke and environs, and how were they received? The people speak.
From history, now I remember when I did a little research for my studies in theology, I was informed, reliable, by a living informant who were alive then, how those who knew him very well, how the people, when the Onyama himself had options to admit different religions, like the Anglicans arrived first, and one is the Jindo, already spreading it around the Anglican mission, but he preferred the white missionaries. That's Onyama. and he had to even send people to invite them to come and prefer them because he wanted to have something foreign, not because the Hindu was
black.
Black. He wanted something different, and certainly was very instrumental to the advent of Christianity. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't himself a Christian, neither did he show interest in becoming one, but surprisingly was very welcoming to the white missionaries, and when they arrived, he made their stay very conducive. So he was really instrumental. He wasn't himself educated, but he seemed to be far ahead of his time. He had link, of course, with the colonial masters via the slave dealers, as I was told, and that exposed him. He traveled far and wide, like going down to the Arochukwu area, mixing with the whites, and so that exposure, although not formal education, made him very enlightened. So he was able to behave as a literate person.
The history of Eke cannot be complete if mention is not made of Chief Onyama, otherwise known as Onyamaneke. He was a paramount ruler of Abaja. Abaja was a chiefdom which comprised some communities in Udi local government area and environs, starting from Ukehe in Nsuka area to Nachi in Udi local government area. Those who were witnesses to Chief Onyama's reign saw many sides of him. While some saw him as an uncompromising dictator, others saw him as a kind, pleasant, and selfless leader with a vision for his people. Who was Chief Onyama, and what type of leadership did he provide for his people, particularly his Eke kinsmen?
I'm only going to dwell upon Chief Onyama's native wisdom, because you could not understand an illiterate, stone illiterate, who was able to have that much of wisdom, to the extent that in 1924 he was selected to go to London to go and meet with Queen Victoria. You wouldn't believe it, and yet he was stone illiterate. He was a very dynamic man.
One of the legacies left by Chief Onyama for Eke generations is education. Although the chief did not pass through any educational institution, he spared no pains in making sure his kinsmen embraced Western education. He himself acquired a certain measure of literacy through years of contact with the early Europeans. Amazed and impressed by the white man's level of sophistication and development, Chief Onyama wished same for his people. He believed that with Western education, these people would live side by side with the white man and later transform Eke into a utopia in which modern technology will be part of his people's life and culture. This is the genesis of the establishment of St. Paul's College, Eke, a premier educational institution in Igbo land. Mr. Ishi, himself a renowned educationist, tells us how education came into Eke.
Christianity came to Eke around about 1915 or around about that time. Then, since then, most of the people are Christians. Most of our people are Christians.
And predominantly what religion?
Predominantly Catholic. Education. Very influential in education. Most of our people working in government today or behind the weapons, they all products of the Catholic mission.
St. Paul's College, Eke, is an institution with a track record of having churned out great men who have made giant strides in their various professions. Unfortunately, since government's takeover of all schools in the country from their rightful owners, these schools have been experiencing myriads of problems, and St. Paul's College no exception. Any hope for the school? The principal, staff, and alumnus of the college, and others speak out.
The serious problems we have experienced here is insecurity. It's difficult to keep school items or school property and then you get them intact. In fact, that has been the bane of this school. At a stage, even the staff, Victoria and Montoria staff, felt that there were no more, life is no more safe, life and property. They had to leave the quarter. Then the laboratories were vandalized in 1995. As I learned. And right now, it is in a shadow of itself. There is virtually nothing going on as far as the science laboratories are concerned, because all these things are completely vandalized.
Another institution that is begging for attention is the health center at Omeke. The center was established to serve the health needs of the 5 communities in Eke, namely Amofia, Amankwo, Oma, Ogui, and Enugu Eke. Today, the center is a mere ghost of its former self. We asked the people about their plans for salvaging or resuscitating the health center. We also talked with the chairman of the local government under whose jurisdiction the center falls. He is Dr. Ungu, a medical doctor. He spoke later.
On the health aspect, we now left our mobile clinic with the medicine and the doctor with them. We stayed with them 3 good days, making sure they touched all the various hamlets in the community. They had it so good. Then thereafter, they came up with this health center problem, which, as you know, is a capital intensive project. By virtue of the fact that I am an alumni or an old boy of St. Paul's AK, that means that I'm a stakeholder in the development of the town. Let me first of all look at the whole scenario with the kind of problems we've been having. We have very good ideas, very good plans, but disappointedly and unfortunately, finance has been our problem. I've told you about the zero allocation syndrome, which has made it very, very, very impossible for us to even discharge our legitimate duties here as overheads and payment of salaries to workers. There is no doubt that as things are today, local governments are very, 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 very poorly funded. Nobody talks about projects.
Apart from educational and other institutions that took root during Chifonyama's reign, there are other facilities established at the time which have since been neglected and are now non-functional. Plans are, however, underway to resuscitate them, including those provided by the communities themselves, which are fallen victims to vandalization and extreme weather conditions. Some of the indigenes recount efforts being made by the people to restore Eke to its former glory.
I can compare Eke to many other communities in eastern Nigeria that I have visited. To begin with, Eke has a very beautiful and well-articulated network of electrification. Eke is looking just like Enugu as far as light is concerned, and many times it's even better. Eke suffered for some time for lack of drinking water, but today our pipe project has been completed, and there is running tap in every nook and corner of Eke town. So, with water, which I think is the main, the most important aspect of living a healthy and civilized life, it's already available in Eke, and the electricity widely available. I think Eke cannot be said to be a jungle lost somewhere.
The dying years of the last century that ended 2 years ago in the year 2000 was seen by the women folk as the year of the global women, that of women empowerment, especially Eke women. It was a period of action. They recount their achievements and announce programs for the future. They regret the inactivity of the men in matters concerning community.
I've told you what the women are doing, what they have done. What we have done in Eke as women include also the Reverend Sisters residents. We now have Reverend Sisters who help in developing and the education of our younger children. We are helping in building the parish house, but that is not all. Our men have not done much. The little I know that Eke men have done so far is just building of these communal roads once in a while, cutting of leaves around the roads and even checking on drainage sometimes in a few areas, but not in all parts of it. They haven't done much.
Some men react to the women's accusations, but praise them for their efforts all the same.
We are not lazy. We had Eke Welfare Union. Eke Welfare Union. They had their own work. Gravel roads, they maintain roads. They have different kinds of work at home. There's fish and all. So they are not lazy.
Whenever any government records successes during its tenure, these successes are often ascribed to good leadership. Same goes when government fails, people blame its failure on bad leadership. What may have contributed largely to Chief Onyama's success was his choice of able lieutenants, no matter their ethnic origin or nationality. One of such lieutenants was John Boyan Gattinson Cole, addressed by his comrades as JBG. He was a Sierra Leonean. JBG Cole so endeared himself to Eke people that they called him by an affectionate name, Pa Cole. Pa Cole was Chief Onyama's trusted friend, in fact his confidant. In turn, JBG gave the chief unbiased advice and rendered honest and laudable services during his tenure with the boss. Pa Cole was seen by those who came in contact with him as a great man, an astute administrator, a trustworthy, disciplined and an articulate personality, soothing, jovial companion, a good counselor, and a great father and uncle who always bared his mind when relating with his wards. Justice Anyagolo, Mr. Ozude, and others have these to say about Pa Cole.
JBG Cole. JBG Graventon Cole, a very good-natured man. Very good-natured man. He did not think evil of anybody I can think of, even those who are hurting him. He was a very liberal man. So liberal that his home, all his property and everything were all for people. Cole was a good man. And I say, may Almighty God have mercy upon his soul for all time. Yes. I think I am in a position to talk about Pa Cole. His age brackets or social brackets used to call him JBG.
Meaning? I hear something graffiti in Cole.
Yes. John Graftonson Cole. Cole was a Sierra Leonean. He came into Nigeria in those days when the elites were either Ghanaians or Sierra Leoneans, or you know, and they looked after administrative functions, both in government and private, and in the private sector. Some of Cole's fellow Sierra Leoneans, people like Kweku, people like who again? They used to visit him from Enugu. Some worked in coal corporation. Coal, from the time I knew, served Chief Onyama as, call him secretary, call him chief clerk, call him administrator. He actually was running Onyama's secretariat. And he lived very close to Onyama's compound, not inside Onyama's compound. He lived in a separate compound in Eke, but shared his time between Eke and Enugu, where the contact with government took place. Onyama loved him so much and relied on him quite through. I lived in Mr. Crow's house as a young man because his wife was the immediate junior sister to my mother, and they took me to stay with them, along with some other relations of mine.
Eke people are predominantly Christians, Roman Catholics to be exact. Before the advent of Christianity, like in most southern parts of the country, the religion of the people was traditional in nature, or what the missionaries called pagan religion. In his first contact with white missionaries, and also from what he had earlier heard and learned about Christianity, Chief Onyama was so impressed that he decided to import that type of civilization into his chiefdom. He envisioned it and all it promised as good for his people, and therefore reached out for it.
He felt that because the Protestant missionaries who came were Africans and Nigerians for that matter, he wanted something new.
That's Chief Onyama.
Chief Onyama. So when the missionary came, one Mr. Jindo of Anglican rite, he wanted something different. So he wanted perhaps white to maybe to something new. So he had to travel all the way to either Aguilera or Onitsha, and then made that invitation. And so he had the white missionaries because he wanted some new thing, and not carrying coal to Newcastle. They wanted something different from what they had.
Although most of Eke people are now said to be Christians, there are still others in the community who practice traditional religion as done by their forefathers. Some of their institutions, relics, are still found in some parts of Eke. However, Reverend Father NM prays for a time in the nearest future when the entire Eke will be totally Christianized.
I see hope, some sign that if the Christians, the Catholics, and the traditional religions, they have some agreement, it can be Christianized. I can think only there can be some homework on the part of the church and the traditional religion. If they can come together and feel that particular Igwanche can be Christianized, first of all, to begin with the changing of the name. If those churches are Christian churches, I feel almost certain they will have the same belief or view of what I have just said.
There are stories told about life in Eke in those good old days. Some of the older generation narrate their childhood experiences, and others do not wish to relive their greener days.
Yes. I told you I was born out, I lived out, and the only periods I came to Eke in those days were holiday and festive periods. So everything I remember about Eke, every childish and beautiful memories I have about Eke are just beautiful memories of feasting and merrymaking and people coming together, drifting together from different parts of Nigeria. It was, my memories are really very pleasant. And I think that the Eke I am knowing today is the reality of a town, not just the fantasy of merrymaking and holiday periods.
Eke occupies a very strategic place in the landscape of the local government area. The 9th Mile area is a gateway to Eke, and it parades the investment potentials that abound in Eke. With its land area that stretches hundreds of kilometers, Eke beckons on potential investors to open up industrial projects in the area. The investors are assured of security, hospitality, cheap and trusted labor force. What type of breeds are these descendants of Enugu? What is their attitude towards strangers in their midst? What efforts have they made collectively towards community development as they wait for government presence and democracy dividends in their villages? Some of them tell us.
Eke is a community of very hospitable people.
Eke people are bright.
Eke community has been so well organized that we have a traditional institution of ruling class. We have the also group that look into a lot of things happening, look into a lot of whatever might be wrong in society and try to rectify it. We have various groups like the Dodili group and Wasoja or Independence that also gather themselves and try to find out what is necessary to be done. And we have in the apex we have the village executive council that organizes meetings and carries out developmental projects and is interested in seeing that Eke is developed. So with this kind of atmosphere, there is peace and stability in Eke. There is wish for progress, so that anybody who is interested or who has the capacity to invest in a way that will benefit the town will be actually very welcome, and he will be made to know that he is very secure and that he is also in the hands of very friendly people.
There may be other facts we need to know about Eke. Be it as it may, Eke presents a picture of highly educated but modest people, very religious, hospitable, sincere, although not very affluent but comfortable. A people known for their frankness and who are moderately ambitious and resourceful. As they look forward to the future and the gains of democracy from the local, state and federal governments with hope and in peace, they urge their kith and kin to look inward and come out with programs for the development of their homesteads. We have no other home, they say. Eke is our only home in this world. Our guests have these visions for Eke and send these messages to the indigents of Ekenese.
What I'd like to hand over is honesty and truth. If only we can get our people to be honest and to do things truthfully, I would have slept happily in death, saying that I have bequeathed something to our people. Honesty and truth. And why this country of Australia is finding it difficult to change this country is that we have not tackled the two areas, for example, that must have to be reformed if we are going to get this country going: police and the judiciary. We have not yet tackled it. I will request and bequeath to Eke people that thing by which we are always known: honesty and truth. They are a small community. Being a small community, you've got to make use of that which God has given to you. Truth and honesty will safeguard that town. Because if they are truthful and are honest, they can do things
They can do things with their hands, they can produce things, but above all, they'll be honest to their fellow beings. Honesty in all things they do. In all things they do will make them whole.
Well, this is where we sign off this documentary. You have seen it all and heard it all. Eke is also home for you and for me. Hope to see you there.
You know, notice this is my very root. Here is where I am born. Let me tell you, this is a thing that is what to be researched on. We need to have accurate research on this very issue. Because it embarrassed we are noticing our own root before I have that thought. Despite the fact that Emeka Omeruwa, the then military governor of Anambra State, made some comments concerning the revitalization of our culture during his tenure of office. I was much more attuned to get this together. That's why I was able to use the artist that knows it best. But with this revitalized culture, we are no more in darkness. We are now showing our ways of life. Economic viability is the foreign exchange it derives. Because I noticed when they worldwide accepted, there's more in the revenue to receive, so that we could get it accepted to the outside world. And that's my purpose.
Enugu, the capital of Enugu State and the core city of the country. With its good city roads, excellent drainage system, and Hello, 416 kilometers to the southeast from Nigeria's city of government, Abuja, is Enugu, the capital of Enugu State and the core city of the country. With its good city roads, excellent drainage system, and Hello, 416 kilometers to the southeast from Nigeria's city of government, Abuja, is Enugu, the capital of Enugu State and the